Hello, I'm Lisa. Namaskaram, and welcome to today's Saturday Sit. Continuing our conversation about equanimity, we're talking about equanimity as an evenness of mind, and specifically evenness of mind in difficult times. Because as we've chatted about, keeping our mind nice and steady when things are going well is not really a challenge. It's more when we're having a difficult time. So evenness of mind is our working definition. We also spent some time just looking at the many ways that this concept of equanimity is pervasive throughout the world. When we look at major world religions and different practices for spirituality, we see this arise again and again. The Sanskrit word for equanimity in the Hindu practice is samatva. And in Christianity, we see this show up as sort of sitting in God's grace. It's this idea that I'm going with the flow because I understand that there's a different and a bigger energy and dynamic at work. Another thing that we talked about was decreasing our control of the world around us so that we can increase our freedom. And it's a little bit counterintuitive, but what we learned, and as we've chatted, is that as we decrease the control that we try to inflict on the world around us, that we increase our sense of freedom. In other words, when we anchor our own positive experience, our well-being, our joy, our happiness, when we anchor that in the world around us and the other, 8 billion or so people with whom we share this beautiful planet, that we are giving away our power in the sense that people are never going to behave or act 100% our way. We don't even behave or act 100% our way. So as we start to learn to not anchor our well-being in the actions of others, for example, things like, oh, I understand what you're saying. If you could have just changed your tone a little, or, I don't like your attitude and therefore I can't, engage in this conversation. The weather's bad and therefore I'm having a crappy day. These aren't things that we want to anchor ourselves in because we can't control them. We can control how we show up. We can control how we respond. And that's what this practice of equanimity is all about. Learning to manage ourselves internally so that we're responding from a place of wisdom and not a place of reactivity. And we sort of moved that conversation in our last session into addressing pain with an equanimous approach and what that looks like. Meaning that when we are hurting and we have this instinct to bolt, to anesthetize, to react even in a knee-jerk way, in a way that we can't possibly be proud of, that this isn't something that we want to do. And I'll give you just a quick example because we didn't get to it last time, but a lot of us are familiar with the work and the persona of Will Smith, who's, an Academy Award-winning, Grammy Award-winning, just one of these folks who he's at the top of his game professionally, or has been for many years. And a couple of years back, he made a knee-jerk reaction at a major awards ceremony, and he didn't probably wake up the next day and think, gosh, that was me showing up at my best. He was triggered by the host of the award show, Chris Rock, who's also another professional in the entertainment space. And he told a joke, which is what these hosts and hostesses of these Academy Awards are meant to do. And it triggered Will Smith. So he's here in this most prestigious environment with all of his colleagues and peers with whom he's worked to, impress and sort of earn this place. And in a moment of non-presence and non-equanimity, he basically clocked the host. It was all on TV. It was not probably the way that he intended to show up. So I use that example because Sure, we can all look at our own situations and say, God, what was I thinking with that move? But it's sometimes easier to see it in others. So when we're relating to pain, we're relating to getting triggered, we want to create that space between stimulus and response, not to stop ourselves fully from acting by any means, but actually just to create that momentary presence where we can actually decide, is this the way I want to proceed? Maybe I did want to clock him and I still do. Maybe I carry on with that plan, or maybe I decide that that would get me more trouble than I actually want to deal with. And therefore, I'm going to choose a different course of action. So that was a little bit of a long introduction, but we're moving into today. The title of our experience together is Setting Boundaries from a Place of Equanimity. And this is a really great place to kind of wrap up our discussion on equanimity, because there could be a misconception, and maybe you've been thinking this all along, is if I am working to be in an equanimous state and I'm really allowing things to be as they are, which is what our training is programming us and helping us become better at doing. If I really do start just allowing things to be as they are, then doesn't that make me a bit of a doormat? If I'm not objecting and I'm not responding, am I just supposed to, not have opinions? Like, I don't find that to be a desired state, right? Nobody wants to be walked all over, which is what I mean by doormat. And I'm happy to share with you this morning that actually, when we come from a place of equanimity, we are exactly the opposite of a doormat. And what I mean by that is, as we learn to make decisions from a place of wisdom and from our place of a core value, for example, I value human life, or just, pick anything that really matters to you. And when we use that as a litmus test to make decisions again and again, what we find is that we expedite this process. In other words, when a decision comes across our radar that is giving us some consternation, and we might stress about it, we might think of, well, should I respond in this way or should I respond in that way? And we weigh it and we kind of go back and forth and can kind of waste a lot of energy doing that. When we are making decisions from a place of equanimity, we know who we are, we know what our core values are, and those decisions become easier. In fact, the whole process of deciding how we want to respond to things, little things and big things both, the whole process gets expedited. And what we find is that we have less of an experience of, I think what we're calling it right now is FOMO, right? We have less of an experience of wishing that we hadn't missed something, this fear of missing out. We don't experience that. And we move into what I would call the joy of missing out, right? JOMO. I chose not to participate in something because as I practice equanimity and I know who I am, these decisions just come easier. And the reason that this matters is because as we do this a million times again, 1, 2, 3, we're making decisions based on this core value, or these core values that we get to know about ourselves. Then we find that boundary setting becomes the natural outflow of our practice. And I'm going to give you a couple just quick examples on this so that you hopefully can start to identify what I'm trying to describe, which is not the easiest thing. But as we move into the meditation practice, it's something hopefully that you can pull in to, the exploration part of our practice. So the first example that I want to give is just a quick experience where I was traveling with some friends not too long ago, and we were in another part of the country, and we had the opportunity to make a quick side trip. It was like less than 24 hours to go to the Grand Canyon. And I had never been, and one of the other friends had never been. And long story short, when we were looking at the opportunity, the only room that we could get was extremely expensive, certainly more money than I would or have ever spent on a place to lay my head. And in a very quick decision-making process, I knew that I would be in the best position to kind of cover the expense of that if we wanted to move forward. And again, it was very expensive. So the knee jerk reaction is, oh, no, it's too much money. But as I was able to stay present with myself in that very quick moment of knowing what matters to me, I was able to draw on the fact that, hey, these are my peeps. I never get to see them. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I value experience more than I value things like money. So let's go for it. And so we were able to get the room and it was just an amazing experience. But I'm using it as an example of how, when we're able to draw on these principles, we can more easily come to a decision. I didn't have to come away from that experience and wish I had done it differently. Another quick example of this is a couple of girlfriends were chatting recently, and I'm in this age group now where our kids are getting married. My kids, not so much, because two of my children I lost at a young age, for those of you who don't know, which is what brings me into this type of work. And obviously my 25-year-old rock star son who lives with us, who's special needs, not getting married. But we're in this age. So one of my friends actually has a son getting married for the second time, and she was having some consternation about the fact that her son had asked her for a certain amount of money to say, hey, can I have $1,000 or whatever it is to pay for a limo for the wedding? And she just felt like, hey, you already got married once, we went all out. Why do we have to now come up with more money? And it was stressful. And she felt like that wasn't the right thing. And then one of our other friends who knows her very well said, but hey, wait a minute, you really love your son. You really want him to be happy. And knowing the relationship that you have, it just seems to me like for $1,000, you have the opportunity to support him come what may. Who knows what might happen down the line, but that in this moment where you have a chance to really show your support, is that a time when you want to hold on to an amount of money that, doesn't make you rich if you keep it. It doesn't make him poor if you don't give it. But knowing you the way that I do and your core value of loving your son, that's not the exact language that was used, but wouldn't it just make sense to give him the money? And the response was like, yeah, I guess so. Decision made. So hopefully these quick examples give you the opportunity to see why this is valuable, why it's worth our time. And there's also, this opportunity as we dip our toes into equanimity, that we sort of start to realize that as we allow things to be as they are, that others are included in this allotment. We don't have to respond or react to things so much. And then as we get further along in the practice, we come to find that, hey, maybe I'm okay too. Maybe I don't have to live in fear that people will see how much I'm hurting and it will scare them away. Or maybe I don't have to live in fear that I'm not okay or I can't show all the parts of myself. So these are just a few of the ways that equanimity can bring an empowerment in our lives. And that's what makes it valuable and worth our exploration. So let's move now into our actual meditation practice. One of the benefits of meditation, and I like to share one of these each week, is what we just talked about. Making this decision-making process go faster. Having a stillness practice and meditation practice in your life is another way that we get to kind of get to know ourselves. Also, another benefit that I just want to mention is it's just this reset, right? Control, Alt, Delete. Sometimes we need to just take a breath. And the idea that there's a right or a wrong way to meditate is false. I would invite you to think about meditation as a way of coming home to ourselves. We're not trying to get anywhere. We're not trying to go to our happy place. We're literally learning how to come home. We're learning how to stay. And that can be, an hour-long meditation where you're really going deep alone. It can also be a breath at a traffic light, or as I think I did a couple of weeks ago, I got a weird start to the practice, I guess, as I do sometimes. And I just took that grounding breath. Anytime that we're conscious of breathing, that is meditation. So let's not use this as an opportunity to criticize ourselves, wonder how we look, or are we supposed to feel a certain way? None of those things. Meditation is about being aware of the life force that's coming into our bodies and leaving our bodies on a very rhythmic and automatic basis. And it's not something that we're aware of. So we want to really bring our awareness to this. When we do decide to sit down and meditate, we want to have just a dignified posture, an erect spine, kind of throwing our shoulders back and being in this place of receptivity, keeping in mind that this is our body, our practice, and however you are most comfortable. If you need to sit in a straight back chair so you have a little more support, just making sure your feet are planted firmly on the ground. We don't want to be pulling on that lower back. If you need to lie down, certainly that's okay too. Whatever most fits your body's needs and creates a space that we can be present. Additionally, if you're so inspired, you can personalize your meditation space as I've done. Fresh flowers are a beautiful way to be reminded of, hope and what's coming. And if your flowers are dying a little, that's okay too, because that can signify the transient nature of life. Candles, incense, but when creating a space, it's all about making it a place that you feel welcome and that you feel safe, just like when we create this for others who might be visiting our home or coming into our office for a meeting. We want to create a space that's welcoming, and in this case, welcoming for ourselves. The meditation itself will go through a couple cycles of breathing, the in-breath coming in for about a 6 count, the out-breath going out for about a 7 count, and there's just a little momentary place where we can rest. I call that 8, or the resting breath. And I'll guide us through that meditation and pull back that support little by little as you move into your own breathing. The actual meditation is intentionally limited because this is something that hopefully you can work on building yourself in the privacy of your home. And after several cycles of breathing together, we'll move into just this little exploration of boundary setting with equanimity, and you can kind of follow along. If you are really engaging, or if you're just breathing on your own, this, again, it's your practice. And hopefully you can get out of it whatever it is that most fuels you and most helps you feel like this time you've set aside to connect is valuable for you and life-giving. So lastly, both at the onset of our meditation and at the conclusion, I will chant a yogic invocation that's in Sanskrit. And it's kind of your cue that we're starting and ending, but it is an invitation to invite light and immortality of spirit and truth into the space together, and to also just to bring peace into that space. So let's go ahead and get started. Taking some deep breaths, just settling into where we are. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Churmaritangamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Beginning with the in-breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out-breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and rest. In-breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out-breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and rest. In-breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And rest. In breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And hold. In breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And hold. In breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And hold. In breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Rest. In breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In breath. Out breath. 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 Please continue breathing at your own comfortable pace. If the mind wanders, just come on back. Focus on your counting if helpful. Thoughts that are coming in, just let them. Let them show up like clouds in the sky and keep going. Not resisting, we're allowing. As we continue our breathing, we're bringing to mind a decision that we made. A decision that we made not to do something. A decision that later gave us heartburn, regret. We're bringing to mind our attempts to make that decision, all the reasons why we decided not to do the thing that we later regretted not doing. Perhaps someone needed us and we didn't show up because we were doing something else and we regretted not showing up for that person. Or perhaps there was a gathering of people that we didn't have the energy to join, but later felt that we missed out. As we're bringing that to mind, we're seeing if we can dip into the experience of wishing that we had made a different decision. And as we do, we're allowing our core value, the one that's still telling us we should have done something differently, we're allowing that core value to arise. And we're going back in time to ask ourselves the question, what if I had led my decision with this core value? How might it have been different? How might my experience of the world be different if I was able to make decisions on these core values of mine and allowed the boundaries to become the natural outflow of my decision making? What if the way that I started showing up on a more consistent basis obviated the need to regret decisions that I've made? How might that change my life? Or not? And we're just hanging in this question and this lingering possibility as we take a few more deep inhales here to signify the possibility of a different way of showing up. And as we exhale, we're letting go of any regrets that we may have. Breathing in possibility, breathing out regret. Knowing that we did what we could do at the time and that we're learning a different way, maybe. Not fixing anything. Just breathing in possibility. Breathing out what can no longer hurt us, what we can no longer change. Perhaps carrying this forward through into our day. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Churmaritangamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaskaram. Welcome back to Equanimity and Setting Our Boundaries. So from here, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our session with just a couple of ways that you might get engaged with this work. I'm proud to share the kind of ongoing building and evolution of our virtual healing community called Scars to Medals. And we're going to drop a link to join that community, or at least check it out in the chat. And another way that you can get engaged is to attend and participate in future sessions for meditation. We will not be meeting next week, but we will go ahead and start our April sessions with a new topic. We're going to leave equanimity kind of off to the side and tackle observation as our next topic, which hopefully is a little more relatable, not so challenging. And you can look for invites for that. And on LinkedIn, we have a newsletter called Stepping Stones. These are stepping stones along our healing path. So you can subscribe to that. And I also have a book that I have self-published on Amazon called The Healing Path, Part 1, Stay Present. It's the first of 3 books in a series, and we'll also share the link to that. I don't often plug the book, as it's just not my style, but I will share briefly that in my efforts to share this practice of equanimity, I've gone back to that book actually a few times, forgotten that I was the one that wrote it, and really was able to access not just conceptual pointers and information, but also very practical applications on how we start to dip our toes into this concept on a very regular basis. We talked in previous sessions about driving being a great way to do this, because it's something that we do every day. The way that we consume food, and others in our culture consume food, because that's something that we do every day, and just different practical applications. These are just little experiments that we can run. No one has to know about them, but they're so helpful. And if you're not inclined to pick up the book, I just invite you to contact me. I have an opportunity to meet with folks in a very informal way. If you go to my website, lisamcfarland.com, and hover over just the connect section, you can easily see my Calendly link, when I might have some time for 15 or 20 minutes at no particular charge, just to talk about these concepts. And I can tell you more about how you can go about experimenting with these things. And finally, these episodes or sessions that are recorded, you can always access the replays both through LinkedIn and also on the YouTube channel for Scars to Medals. And we'll drop the link for that in the chat as well. So we did go over on time a little bit this morning, and I just did want to really lay the groundwork for kind of bringing this conversation on equanimity to a close, which we've now done. But again, if it's a chat you want to continue, please reach out to me. In the meantime, I just do thank you for being here, particularly if it's your first experience. And until we meet again, let's do our best to stay present, to stay grateful, and to stay healing. And as always, have a beautiful day. Namaskaram. Be well.